Okay, so this lesson is all about solving equations with decimals. And there are two ways to solve equations with decimals. There's clearing the decimals, and then there's just using those decimals. So I'm going to show you both ways, just like I did with the fractions. So let's look at example one. Example one is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to subtract 0.5 on both sides of the equation. And this would be one that you would not need to clear the decimal. You would just solve using the decimals. So 3.5 minus 0.5 gives you what? 3.0 or just 3. Okay. Now, what happens when we get to practice one? What are we going to do to both sides? We're going to add 4.5 to both sides. Now, the one thing that you need to be careful of is that if you are solving with decimals, that you line up your decimals. Where is my decimal where the 3 is? Behind the 3. So I'm going to add a decimal and a 0. Now I can add them. So x equals 7.5. Now, some of you don't even need to add the decimal and the 0 to know that it's 7.5. Some of us do. So here we go. Now let's go to example 2. I want you to do example 2. Oh, I'm going to do example 2 with you. You're going to do practice 2 on your own. So I'm going to add 2.9 to both sides. Where is my decimal in the 40? Behind the 0. So I'm going to add a decimal in 1 0 because there's one number behind this decimal. So there we go. And when I add 2.9, I line up my decimals. Minus. You are right. Just checking to make sure you're paying attention. Not really. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 2.9 on both sides. X equals, well, yeah. Oops. I have to minus 3. This becomes a 9. That becomes a 10. So yes, I have 37. Oops. 37.1. Do you guys know how to subtract like this when I have zeros in the way? It is 37.1. 3. Oh, is that not clear? Okay, I'll go slower with that. Hold on just a second. So if I have 40.0 minus 2.9, I have to borrow to make this a 10 so I can actually subtract, but I can't borrow. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't borrow from a 0. So I borrow from my 4 and I make that a 3. And this becomes a 10. I still need to borrow to make this a 10. So I borrow from the 10 and I make it a 9 and this becomes a 10. Okay. So then I can subtract and I get 37.1. All right. I want you to try practice 2 on your own. Okay. I'm going to start solving. Okay. So you should have gotten 16.8 for practice 2. Okay. All right. Let's go down to example 3. I still think that these are ones that I would solve without clearing decimals yet. So on example 3, I'm going to add 0.08 to both sides.
Okay. And I end up with 4.32 equals X. So check your answer for that one. And then I want you to do practice 3 on your own. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start. I subtract 0.12 on both sides. And I end up with 3.5 equals X. You can have a 0 at the end, but you don't need it. Okay, any questions on the first side? Okay, let's go ahead and go to the back. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to clear your fractions. You do not have to do it this way, but this is another option. What you have to do is you have to look at where the farthest place value is in your problem. This is in the tenths, this is in the tenths, and the 4 here is in the hundredths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply every term here by 100. Okay, every term by 100. When you multiply a decimal by a 100, how many times are you moving your decimal point? 2. You're moving it twice. If you multiplied it by 10, you'd be moving it once. If you multiply it by 1,000, you're moving it 3 times. So I'm going to move my decimal twice on each one of these. And when I do that, I put a 0 in any blank spots. That's kind of hard to see. But I end up with 10x plus 30x equals 724. Now, some of you are thinking, no, I don't want to do this. Those numbers are too big, and that is perfectly fine. I'm going to do this one both ways, though. Now I combine my like terms, and I end up with 40x equals 724. And then I divide by 40. Now, this is going to require work to be shown. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to solve 724 divided by 40. So 40 goes into 72 one time. And 40 will go into 324 about 8 times. Let's check. So that's 0, 3, 2. Yep. I'm left with 4. Now, I've run out of numbers up here, so I'm going to add a decimal and a 0, and I'm going to bring my decimal up and my 0 down, and 40 goes into 41 time. So my answer here is that x equals 18.1. So that's solving by clearing your decimal. Are there any questions about what I did? Okay, now I'm going to solve by not clearing, and let's see the difference in the math. So 0.1x plus 0.3x equals 7.24. All right, so I am going to combine my like terms right here, and I get 0.4x equals 7.24. And then I have to divide by 0.4. This actually looks like a little bit less work. But the thing is you have to know how to divide by decimals for you to be comfortable with this and do it correctly. So I'm going to divide 7.24 by 0.4. Can somebody tell me before I begin dividing what I actually need to do? Yeah, I can't have a decimal out here, so I have to move it over, and then I move it over once here. If I move it over once on the outside, I move it over once on the inside. Don't move it all the way to the end unless you need to. So then I have to bring my decimal up. At this point, what I'm actually doing is I'm dividing 72.4 by 4. Are there any questions about that step? Okay, now I can start dividing. 4 goes into 7 one time. 4 goes into 32 8 times. Bring down my 4, and 4 goes into 4 one time. And I'm left with x equals 18.1. So I end up with the same answer. Just I did a little bit different work. So my question, how many of you prefer it the first way? This way right here. Okay, how many of you prefer to do it this way without clearing your decimal? Okay, it's okay if you like it that way. All right, so then what I want you to do, whichever way you prefer, I want you to do practice 4, okay? And I'm gonna pause the video while you work. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna clear my decimals here. You don't have to. And I have to multiply by 100 because the farthest place value is 100. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And this becomes 3x plus 70x equals 365. Now I add my like terms here. And I get 73x equals 365. And then I divide by 73. Now I have to do some division. So 365 divided by 73. Oh, goodness me. Let's see. 3 times what is close to a 5, or 3 times 7 is close to 36. Okay. 1, 5. Oh, it is. Okay. So x equals 5. Right. Any questions about practice 4? Thank you. Okay, let's do example 5. I am going to clear my decimal. Oh, yes, I can. So I cleared them. I have to multiply by 10 because the farthest place value is in the tens place. So that means I'm just moving my decimal over once on both of those. And I get 15x equals 45. And then I divide both sides by 15. 45 divided by 15 is 3. Thank you. Okay. This one right here, I'll solve this one without clearing the decimal, and we'll see how that goes. I'm just going to divide both sides by 2.4. Okay, so over here, I'm going to take 72 and I'm going to divide it by 2.4. I move my decimal over. I put a decimal at the end of 72 because it's not there, and I move it over. And so now I'm dividing 24 into 720, which would have been the same thing as if I would have cleared my decimals. So 24 goes into 72 3 times. So is my answer 3 here? Why isn't it 3? Yeah, I still have the 0. 24 goes into 0 times. Or 0 times. So my final answer is x equals 30. Okay. All right, last 2 problems, fairly long. The first thing I would do before I do anything else is I would combine my like terms. But you could also clear the decimals first. But I'm going to combine my like terms first. So 0.7 plus 1.4 is 2.1. And 0.7 plus 0.8 is 1.5. Now, at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and clear my decimals. Like I said, you could have cleared them at the top first. It doesn't matter which way. So what do I have to multiply this equation by to clear my decimals? Huh? 10. So I'm gonna multiply everything by 10. When I do that, I just move my decimal over one place. And now I have 21 minus 42x equals 15. No, yeah, 15. Okay, now I'm gonna subtract 21 on both sides. Okay, we have some negatives here. We have negative 42x equals a negative 6. That doesn't look right, but it is. So now I'm gonna divide both sides by a negative 42. And x equals, not 7, because 42 divided by 6 is 7, but 6 over 42 is gonna be 1/7. Yes, and you can leave this as an improper fraction. Or, I'm sorry, a fraction, not improper. Okay, let's do this last one. I want everyone to clear the fraction first. You're gonna multiply everything by, what are we gonna multiply everything by? 100, because look, this one is in the hundreds place. So multiply everything by 100. And then we're gonna come back and you're gonna check your answer. Okay. And I'll do one step at a time on this one. Okay, after you distribute that 100, check to see if you got the same thing I did. We're almost done. This is the last one. Okay. Now, somebody tell me what 25 minus 40 is. Quick.
Negative 15.
Negative 15x.
Equals 30x.
Okay, oops. So we combine these like terms. Now, this one looks different. We're dealing with negatives. So what are we going to do to both sides? Not yet. Look, we have a 30x over here.
Minus.
Yeah, we're going to subtract 30 on both sides. 30x. Negative 15 minus 30x. Negative 45x equals negative 130. And then we have to divide by 45, negative 45. And we're going to do some math here. 130 divided by 45. Let's see, 93? No. 2. Get 40. Now I'm going to add a decimal and a 0 and bring it down. And 45 goes into 400. Let's see, 90. 8 times maybe? 4, 0. 36. 400 minus 360 is 40. Oh, what's happening here? Repeating decimals. So our answer is x equals 2.8 with the repeating. Is it positive or negative? 2.8. It's positive. A negative divided by negative is positive. Okay, that concludes lesson 2.5.